The highly anticipated tennis love triangle movie Challengers hits Irish cinemas in 1 week from now, Friday, April 26th, and it is Zendaya's best role yet. Let's get into my non-spoiler review. First of all, thank you to Warner Brothers Ireland for letting me see this movie last night early. It was an amazing night and an amazing movie. And let me just tell you now, I'm not beating around the bush here. This is Zendaya's best role. She's having a great year so far, just off the back of Doom Part 2, which I actually thought she was great in. But no, this by far is her best role. She just is so commanding on screen. Her presence is next level. Her acting is off the charts. She was a badass. She was just like quite evil as well. Like she was really just such a complex character that I loved spending these 2 hours with. And I think you're going to be really pleasantly surprised by how good she actually is. And I think she needed this. You know, it's finally time for people to see just how good she is, because this is her best role, in my opinion. Doom Part 2, as I said, was great, but this takes the cake. And she's joined by Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist. Now, Josh O'Connor is incredible. Like, there's so many scenes where he just comes in and he just steals that scene, and you're like, oh, this dude is really funny, really cocky, really sarcastic, but I'm also kind of rooting for him. I don't know. It really plays with your emotions and your mind a lot. And then on the opposite of that, Mike Feist is also really good in this. But I think this movie being so centralized about Zendaya, Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor, I do think Zendaya and Josh O'Connor are slightly stronger than Mike Feist. But the three of them together, they command every scene. And this movie really is a love triangle movie more than it is a tennis movie, in my opinion. Well, maybe it's like 50-50 split down the middle, but if you think that it's just going to be 100% about tennis, no, it's not, because this is a drama. It's a romantic movie. Like, this love triangle between the three of them is the heart and soul of this movie. And I actually think that if that love triangle didn't exist, this movie wouldn't be as good as it is, because it hooks you in. I was sitting there and I was like, what is happening? Like, how and when, and it really just has you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. And I love movies like that. So to give you context with no spoilers here, Zendaya is essentially a really, really, really good tennis player, right? And she is signed by Adidas, and she's basically the next future star. And Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist's character are also some really good tennis players. And they all meet at a party. They kind of really fancy Zendaya and they want to talk to her. So they do. And that's kind of where the love triangle begins. But what happens is we jump from present day to the past. But what makes this movie so intriguing is that in present day, Zendaya is married to Mike Feist's character, and he ends up playing a challenger match against Josh O'Connor's character, who actually is Zendaya's ex-boyfriend. And this is what I'm telling you about this love triangle. So obviously Mike Feist's character is a big US Open player. He's one of the greatest tennis players currently around, and Josh O'Connor is just a downbeat, like nobody who's just still playing tennis, but he's very good at it, but he hasn't got his big break. When they come up against each other, that is when everything kicks off, and the whole movie is actually just centered around that one tennis match. But it goes back to the past to give you context about who these characters are, their relationships with each other, how they know each other, and why they are actually beefing so hard right now. And then it goes back to the present, and that is my only letdown with the movie. It does jump around a lot. Like, there's a lot of 13 years ago, 2 weeks later, the next day, the following day, the last day. And I mean, I was thinking about it and I was like, it felt like a tennis match between the present and the past. And if that was kind of like a stylistic choice by Luca Guadagnino, who's the director, then that's actually really cool and really good. And it would probably not be a con for me, but I mean, the kind of casual moviegoer would probably be like, right, okay, past, present, basically like a tennis match. So yeah, that's just the one thing, but I was able to follow along with it, so you probably will too. And I actually do think that going to the past made the present a lot more significant, because, as I said, this movie is centered around that one match. So everything else is just filling in the gaps as to why these characters are basically hating on each other so much in this tennis match. But yeah, it's full of just twists and turns. You're not going to expect some things, you will expect other things, but you're still going to be absolutely shook by what happens. And I think the cinematography is such a standout here for me. There's one sequence in particular that is burnt into my brain that I actually have been thinking about all night, and the audience essentially becomes a tennis ball, and you're being like thrown back and forth across the net, you're being spun upside down, and you genuinely feel like you're there. It's just incredible, and it's paired with such a good soundtrack. Probably not like the soundtrack that you think it's going to be, but it's like full of synth sounds that are just constantly there. Even just in normal quiet conversations between characters, there's like constant sounds being thrown at you that you're just like, this is really cool. And yeah, I was down for it. I dug it completely, and honestly, I'm really pleasantly surprised by this movie. It wasn't really one that was top of my list, but after seeing it, I'm just really like blown away. Like, round of applause for everybody that made this movie, because it's very good, and I can't really fault it, to be honest with you. The only thing that I really can say is just that it goes back and forth from the present quite a lot, but like honestly, the movie bangs. Like, everything across the board, the acting performances are great. I've just told you it's Zendaya's best performance. Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist are just incredible supports as well. The cinematography, as I explained, so good. Soundtrack is next level, and I was just so invested in this love triangle, and I probably would have sat there for another 4 hours, and I kind of want to see what happens next. Please make it Challengers too, because I want to know what actually happens. But yeah, you'll understand when you see it. It's out next Friday, April 26th. You should go and see it. You're not going to be disappointed. This is one that you're going to be talking about, and I know a lot of people will be. Challengers, it's a great movie. I'm giving it 4.5 stars out of 5, 9 out of 10. Literally, the only point that's docking from it is that back and forth. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal. It's still a great movie, and one that I can't wait to see again.